Greg, you have some thoughts on the royal bathroom.
I love that he's renovating the bathroom, or renovated, because it's so fitting after dealing with 4 years of Joe Biden's crap that we have to do that. Metaphorically and literally, the White House needed a serious house cleaning. The Democrats treated America the way frat boys treated a cheap motel on spring break. You need a complete fumigation. That is not a pattern on the bedspread. Trust me. In terms of this hysteria, it kills me I mean, obviously, this is more theater. You know, somehow Republicans and Trump enjoy inflicting pain on America. These are the people that ignored crime waves, that ignored the illegal immigrant gangs that came over, that said inflation was good for you. They do not have, again, we do not have to give them any of our credibility at this point. They covered up for an incapacitated president. So they know nothing about inflicting pain. I wish they would put some effort into the real fears instead of the imaginary ones. The imaginary fears are basically what we used to call luxury problems. So instead of going after the real fears that Trump understood because he spoke to people, crime, cost of living, public education is an actual fear. The imaginary fears of Democrats are the luxury beliefs that you can have time to indulge, whether it is climate change, transphobic bathrooms. Is this bathroom okay for other people? Because you are well protected from the consequences of the problems you actually ignore. So you don't have to worry about crime because you have security. If you tabulated the opportunity costs of fabricated fears just on climate change alone, it's $1.3 trillion a year that was spent. And you actually had applied that to actual problems, drug addiction, urban blight, police salaries, public education, the fire risk in California. How many problems could have been solved if we didn't sink all of that money into an imaginary fear? I guess what I'm saying is, in the future, fear the fear, because it's going to come again. They're going to have a new one.
Well, New Yorkers don't fear the fear. They're about to elect a socialist who's going to exponentially make all those problems much, much worse. Well said, Greg. So we're on day 30. Yes, you're welcome. We're on day 31 of the shutdown, Joey. Yeah. And if it's not lifted by Thanksgiving, is it going to lift ever? And what will it take to get us out of this impasse?
Some Democrat was on yesterday and was like, yeah, I think Veterans Day is the no later than date. It's like, where do these days come from? It was when the new premiums come out, you know, around 1st of November was going to be the no later than day, announced Veterans Day. This is what I'll tell you. Part of this segment is the idea that Trump is floating ending the filibuster, the nuclear option. You know, Vance was speaking with Erica Kirk, and he was asked about deploying the National Guard. And the question was, do you support doing this knowing that the next president might be a Democrat and do it as well? And Vance said, don't not do something you need to do in fear that the Democrats might do it next, because they've already done it. And when you talk about the filibuster, for example, it was Harry Reid in 2013 that brought in the nuclear option for presidential confirmations. So now Republicans moved it forward for judicial, for the Supreme Court. So this old statesman's way of governing is a bygone era. It's gone. It's not here anymore. It might have died with the old statesmen, but it's not here anymore. We have to come to terms with that. We can miss it, long for it, but it's like missing your grandparents' house. It doesn't exist anymore. Even if the house does, they don't. That's not how we're governed now. That may change again one day, but it's not how we're governed now. We are evenly split by the numbers, by the votes, by the rhetoric, by the issues. I don't like it. I don't necessarily advocate for ending the filibuster. But this idea that don't do it now because they might do it to you later, they already have.
All right.
So why not?
So, Harold, take us into Washington. Take us into the chamber. You were a member of the House of Representatives, so you know this world inside out. The Senate is supposed to be the upper chamber, but they're acting like a bunch of babies. I actually fear for this country if we're just going on a 51-vote majority in the Senate. It means they've completely given up on working together. What does the nuclear option mean long-term for both parties?
Happy Halloween. Good to be with you. I think a couple of things. I've heard John Thune, and I've heard some Republicans, John Thune, who I served in Congress with and like a great deal and respect, say that a lot of why Democrats won't come to the table, Kennedy, in the Senate to try to end this moment and get the government back open is because they're afraid of the far left in the party. And they're probably right. I think the fact that John Thune, who I think is a deal maker, and Mike Johnson, the reason they can't sit down with Democrats is because President Trump doesn't want them to. Number two, to Joey's point, which ties into yours, we may have left this era where we want some sort of statesmanship or we want government to work in a certain way. I hope they don't end the filibuster. I think one of the great protections that the minority, not racial minority, but the political minority has in this country when politics is being litigated like this is that the majority just can't run over the minority unless there are rules that are followed. I will say this, though. If I were president of the United States as a Democrat, and I had a Democrat-controlled Congress by 1 seat and a Republican-controlled Senate by 1 seat, I think it behooves the leader of the country when you have this kind of silly, immature politics happening on both sides, and I'll blame Democrats more for the sake of the argument. You need a president that will come to the table and say, here's what we're going to do. Here's why we have to do this. And go negotiate with them, and let's figure out an answer to this. For the life of me, I don't understand how we can be, and the president says this often, we're the hottest country in the world, yet 42 million people are on food stamps in America. Put aside that the funding is not there, but we have one out of eight Americans experiencing this. This, to me, is as fundamental a problem as anything. But we are faced with a crisis right now.
And we also have an obesity epidemic. The irony, Harold.
Right, and because the food is so, this is where Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is right. I hope he focuses on this. I just can't for the life of me understand why people won't come back, make the Republicans agree to deal with the health care premiums and get the government back open. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, people suffering like this is something that I mean, put aside being inconvenienced, flying. You have 42 million people who are losing their health care, are going to see premiums go up. Let's do the least that government's supposed to do, which is to provide these kind of benefits for everyday Americans. So I'm as discouraged as you are. I hope Joey's wrong. I hope we get back to a moment where statesmanship reigns, but
we're going to have to throw all the clowns out if we're going to get there. Speaking of clowns, Paul, if you had known that
you're not a clown,
that the former vice president had such a potty mouth, would you have voted for her?
I think she's just wonderful. She's so authentic. Here's the thing. Look, let's try to capture all the commentary here that's coming from the left. These days, on the left, the Democratic Party right now, you're either an anarchist or an elitist. And the elitists want to be down with the anarchists. And that's what's behind all of that statements, all those statements, right? You got Kamala cursing. Where's that coming from? All of a sudden, she's trying to show us how street she is, right? They're trying to reach out to the middle class and people, everyday Americans that they've completely lost. Van Hollen, right? Republicans just enjoy watching people suffer. Here's Van Hollen. Comes from a State Department background, his family. Massachusetts boarding school, Swarthmore, where he got a BA in philosophy. All right, he got a master's from Harvard JFK School. And I'd like to dump on that, but I went there too, so I can't. Georgetown Law. This guy didn't have a job till he was almost 30. All right, and he's telling us now how we're supposed to live. He's never had a real job. He's never been scuffed up, much like Biden. He was never in the real working sector, and now they're telling us how horrible we are. Bottom line is this: if you notice, the narrative has changed. Initially, it was we want to get rid of the health care. We want to take away health care from all the middle class. Now, that didn't work, all right? Very clearly, the polling showed it didn't work because it came back to Obamacare, and they didn't want to own that. So now, all of a sudden, it's snap. We want everybody to starve, and that's what they're going to go with. Recognize something. The filibuster was not put in place by the Founding Fathers. They had never perceived that. There was no filibuster till about mid-1800s. So this is not something that is anti-constitutional. I hope they don't get rid of it as well. I agree with you. But that said, it's not like this is so far out of the norm. It was something that was put in as a rule in the Senate to make sure that it was more deliberative, they didn't have the tyranny of the majority and all of that. But at some point, if it's going to regularly devolve to the point that our entire government apparatus freezes, well, you know what? Then maybe it's time to go. And maybe the people voted for a majority, even if it's one vote. At least the thing moves forward. But the bottom line from where I sit right now is you have a very simple way to do this. The continuing resolution, everybody gets to eat, and we cut the deal. As before we came on the air, just to close the loop, 2 judges have ruled that they got to use the discretionary funds. They got to find money to pay the SNAP benefits, okay? Look at what they did. It's such blatant forum shopping, all right? 2 Obama judges, it was in Massachusetts, I forget what the other one is. Both of them Obama appointed. So very clearly this has gone into the hyper-political stuff that, by the way, always gets overturned when it goes up the chain. So This idea that they're using leverage, that's a bad optic. Pass a continuing resolution, get people fed, and then let's cut a deal.
All right, here we go. A huge programming note. Jesse Waters has an exclusive interview with Erica Kirk this coming Wednesday, November 5th at 8 p.m. It is Erica's first sit-down interview since Charlie's assassination.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.